Patient presenting with shock requires fluid resuscitation, but evidence-based medicine has shown us the ill effect of overzealous fluid administration. Knowing the ill effect of giving a lot of fluids to the patient has brought the concept of goal-directed fluid therapy. So what are the hemodynamic monitors which would help us in giving this goal-directed fluid therapy? Now, traditionally, the two most common invasive hemodynamic monitors used were central venous pressure monitoring and pulmonary artery occlusion pressure monitoring. Now, both these monitors were traditionally used for hemodynamic monitoring during fluid therapy, but these monitors are not without flaws and they are too invasive to be used very commonly, and they are being affected by a lot of, let's say, heart and lung conditions in the body. So they are not accurately predicting the required fluid status of the patient for helping us in giving the fluid therapy. In this section, we will talk about what are the newer hemodynamic monitors which help us in this goal-directed fluid therapy. So before talking about the newer monitors, just few lines about what are the reasons of the drawbacks and inaccuracies with the use of traditional monitor. So what are the traditional monitors which were used? Pulmonary artery catheter. Once upon a time, this was considered as the gold standard, but a lot of studies have shown that use of pulmonary artery catheter in critically ill patient for goal-directed, for let's say hemodynamic monitoring for fluid therapy has not shown to improve the outcome. Rather, has increased the morbidity and mortality in the patient. So the pulmonary artery catheter fails to improve outcomes in critically ill patients, and may be associated with harm because of its invasiveness. It is quite invasive monitor because of its invasiveness, and you can imagine, so we are passing through all the chambers of the heart to insert it in pulmonary artery. So how much invasive this monitor is, and in a critically ill patient it may be associated with harm, and it was not improving the outcome at all. So it was kind of replaced by the less invasive one, that was your central venous pressure monitoring. And in 1990s, this was one of the commonest used monitor for hemodynamic monitoring and helping us in fluid, let's say, fluid administration to the patient. But CVP, is it without any flaws and accuracies? Though it is less invasive, is it accurate? Well, inconsistent in prediction of fluid responsiveness. Both your CVP and pulmonary artery catheter has shown this inconsistency, especially CVP, which is very much affected by the heart condition and also by the intrathoracic pressure. Now, if patient has any regurgitation or if patient has any right ventricular dysfunction, then CVP would not measure the pressures of the right atrial accurately, and it would not be very helpful in guiding our fluid therapy to the patient. And apart from this, change in the intrathoracic pressure along with mechanical ventilation was also affecting the reading of the central venous pressure, right? So both CVP and pulmonary artery occlusion pressure has poor predictive value for predicting fluid responsiveness, fluid responsiveness. And CVP especially is getting affected by a lot of physiological derangement in the body. So CVP is affected by number of physiological derangements like your valvular regurgitation, RV dysfunction, then your variation in intrathoracic pressure, which will definitely happen for a patient on mechanical ventilation. So all this were affecting the CVP value, again pointing towards its poor predictive value in predicting fluid responsiveness. And as I said, there was a lot of complications in inserting them, especially the PA catheter. PA catheter has, let's say, is associated with a lot of complications like arrhythmias, like even a cardiac rupture has been reported during its insertion. So, complication associated with invasiveness of these monitor, right? Again, required a new monitors. Apart from this, data interpretation, how the let's say parameters were measured, it did not had any kind of standardization. There was a lack of standardization of the parameters which was to be measured. So lack of standardization of technique and hemodynamic complexities of the critically ill patient again affected the data interpretation. So lack of standardization of technique and hemodynamic complexities of patient affected the data interpretation. So both these monitors had a lot of inconsistencies and inaccuracies, and we required new monitors. But are the new monitors without any issues? Before discussing about these new monitors, we need to understand their limitations as well. So a lot of newer monitors for measuring fluid responsiveness were developed. Measuring fluid responsiveness was developed, but we need to understand their limitations as well. So what are the limitations of these newer monitors? So since they are new, still new, being new, we don't have a lot of let's say studies with a more number of patient pointing towards their accuracy. So still evidence-based medicine's data regarding their accuracy can be questioned. So what exactly are the limitations? Now, first limitation of these let's say newer monitors is that a lot of these monitors, the parameters which they calculate are based on proprietary based algorithm, which is again not standardized. So many of these tools use proprietary algorithm or imaging, right, making it difficult to confirm their validity. Algorithm or imaging making it difficult to confirm their validity. So these are like algorithm are company based, and they vary from one company to other company. So their validity, most of them, their validity is still not very much confirmed by a large RCT trials, etc. Then the second issue was that some of these devices produced data requiring a lot of complex interpretation, which required an expert in that, let's say, with that monitor to interpret those data. So these devices produce data requiring complex interpretation, which can be challenging if it is not properly, people who are monitoring are not properly trained. Now, apart from this, the most important, the issue with limitation with these newer monitor was lack of RCT trials, large RCT trials. So there was no large RCT of resuscitation guided by non-invasive hemodynamic monitors, which we are going to discuss, right? So there was no large RCT which proved their benefit. Okay, so their monitors can be divided into upstream and downstream monitor. Now, upstream monitors are what we were traditionally using. The traditional monitors were also upstream monitor, and a lot of newer monitors are upstream monitor, but a lot of newer monitors are downstream monitor also. So, what do I mean by this upstream and downstream? Now, flow, pressure, etc., when it is measured, that is the condition of heart, the condition of vena cava, condition of the great vessels, then it's called upstream monitor. And the perfusion at the level of the tissue is when it is measured, then it is called the downstream monitor. So upstream monitor means flow and pressure in heart, vena cava, pulmonary artery, aorta, etc. And they are used to assess the hemodynamic status. So these are upstream monitor. So what is the condition of heart? If the condition of heart pumping is good, perfusion is being maintained. The inferior vena cava is, let's say, inferior vena cava condition is it's good. The perfusion is being maintained. Aorta is adequately filled. The perfusion is being monitored. So this is monitoring the hemodynamic status, and on this we are interpreting whether the tissue is getting the perfusion or not. But we have some downstream monitors as well. So what do we mean by this downstream monitor? And we know that these monitors are, let's say, kind of even more important, because how do we define shock? Shock is the hemodynamic condition in which the perfusion of the end organs are not maintained. So if we have a monitor which monitors the perfusion of these end organs, they would be more precise for monitoring. So shock with end organ dysfunction occurs at cellular level or tissue level. So any monitor, any tool, so any tools which assess the alteration in tissue oxygenation, or microcirculation, tissue oxygenation or microcirculatory blood flow, they come under downstream monitor, right? They come under downstream monitor. So this is upstream, downstream monitor. Here we will discuss mostly upstream monitor. So what are the principles on which these monitors are based? So what are the principles on which these monitors are based? So all the newer monitors, most of them, they are based on heart and lung interaction principle during the ventilation, during mechanical ventilation. So most of them are based on heart and lung interaction during mechanical ventilation. So what happens during positive pressure ventilation? When we are breathing spontaneously, the interthoracic pressure is negative. But when the patient is on ventilator, the interthoracic pressure during inspiration is positive. So what happens during this increased intrathoracic pressure? So during mechanical ventilation, during inspiratory phase, the intrathoracic pressure increases. Intrathoracic pressure is high, is increased. Now, this increased intrathoracic pressure would decrease the venous return. So, venous return is decreased. And this decrease in venous return causes the vena cava to distend. So this will cause the vena cava to distend, because the venous return is decreasing, the blood is more in these vena cava. So vena cava to distend. In a preload, let's say dependent patient, what will happen? So in preload dependent patient, there would be a cyclic changes in left ventricle stroke volume. So as I said, the venous return decreases. When the venous return decreases, this will decrease the right ventricle output, And ultimately, this decrease in right ventricle output would decrease the left ventricle output over few cycles. Now, in preload dependent patient, there is a cyclic change in left ventricle stroke volume. This change is, there is a cyclical change seen in left ventricular stroke volume, right? And is its coupled change is its coupled arterial pulse pressure are seen. Coupled changes in arterial pulse pressure are seen, right? The magnitude of these changes tell us whether the patient is fluid responsive or not, right? So magnitude of these changes tell us about the volume responsiveness. So in a preload dependent patient, cyclic change in left ventricular stroke volume and its coupled arterial pulse pressure changes are seen. So left ventricular cyclic change, the pulse pressure, the left ventricle is responsible for maintaining the perfusion. So peripheral pulse pressure changes would also be coupled along with the changes in the left ventricular volume. And the dynamic of these changes, magnitude of these changes tell us about the responsiveness to the fluid. So magnitude of these changes is proportional to fluid responsiveness, right? So by different monitors or monitoring technique which we will discuss, we measure these magnitude of these changes during a respiratory cycle due to this heart-lung interaction which happens during mechanical ventilation. And by seeing these changes, we would know whether the patient is fluid responsive or not. So these are the dynamic monitor, and over every respiratory cycle, we can assess, we can monitor the patient, right? So this is the principle behind most of these monitors. Now, one more term we need to know before going into these monitors. One is volume tolerance and other is fluid responsiveness. Now, if patient doesn't have any cardiac disease, even if we give them a little more of the volume, then let's say the harmful effect of excessive volume will not be seen. The patient can tolerate even administration of high intravascular volume. But the patient who have cardiac dysfunction, who are critically ill, most of these patients have cardiac dysfunction. Now, in them, excessive volume cannot be tolerated. So, volume tolerance means that the conditions generally refers to notion that administration of intravascular fluid resuscitation will cause no harm to the patient. Resuscitation will cause no harm. So basically, patient's heart and lung can tolerate little excessive volume, right? So this volume tolerance may be present in normal patient. What do we mean by fluid responsiveness? Now, fluid responsiveness or volume responsiveness is the responsiveness of the person to the fluid. What do I mean by this? The volume responsiveness. This implies improvement in cardiac output. Typically by 10 to 20%. And when cardiac output will improve, ideally the lung perfusion, the tissue perfusion will improve. Improvement of cardiac output and tissue perfusion by administration of IV fluid, by administration of IV intravascular fluid. So this is something called volume responsiveness, right? And volume tolerance is that patient can tolerate intravascular volume without much harm happening in them. So we need to understand these two terms, okay?